Good morning, everybody. Hope everybody's having a spectacular and stress-free NFL Sunday morning. Thank you for joining us here for what is this, week 12 episode of TLR Roundtable, our mailbag show. Obviously, the stress comes tomorrow night when the Chargers play the Ravens. So hopefully we're all enjoying some stress-free games this weekend, and glad to have everybody with us to enjoy another episode of the TLR Roundtable. So thank you. Craig, how's it going this morning?
Good, man. I'm looking forward to another sleepless night tomorrow. I'm sure it'll be exciting one way or the other, and I probably won't be going to bed until around 1 a.m. and then struggling to force myself to sleep for 3 to 4 hours. But other than that, all is well.
Yes, we'll have a stressful game tomorrow night, and then my family leaves for New York City bright and early Tuesday morning. So probably will not be sleeping a whole lot Monday night as well, and hopefully we're celebrating a win, and I'm feeling good going onto the plane instead of feeling like shit. So we'll see what happens. Looking forward to a big win on Monday night.
Yeah, for sure. Same way. Leaving here Tuesday evening, and hopefully I get to enjoy a win going into Thanksgiving holiday. So it just kind of adds to the festivities a bit.
And Craig and I were just chatting, just so everybody's aware. I just mentioned I'm out of town next week. Craig's out of town next week. Not sure what Garrett's schedule is, but we will not have any shows next week during the week because of the Thanksgiving holiday and family obligations and travel. Just not going to work this week. So a content-free week this week, and then we'll get back to it the first week in December.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We'll be here to kick things right back off once we digest all of their food and come out of those food comas we'll definitely be in. But we'll be back. Just give us a little bit of time.
All right. So we have some Discord questions this morning. We have a couple of Twitter questions this morning and a couple bad tweets. I'll say the bad tweets this week are pretty weak. Nothing. I don't think there's anything we're going to get too fired up about, but we'll see how it goes. So, by the way, we've been having some issues with questions on Twitter. We're only getting 2 or 3 a week. So if anybody wants to get their questions on, definitely hit us up on Twitter. Use that hashtag at hashtag TLR Roundtable. And you can send it anytime during the week, and we'll be sure to get it in. We want to start getting more Twitter questions up here if we can. So please do hit us up and fire up the questions, get that cranked up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to start with the first question, and I'm going to have Craig go ahead and read it. So here we go. I'm going to get it up, and there we go.
Yeah, let's fire this off. So this comes from Shags Trotsky. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing that properly and also not saying something that I shouldn't. Your takes, I'm sorry, your takes do far. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so far, clearly. Your takes so far on the development of Hart and Still, and how valuable do you think Clinkscale has been for Derwin? What would you say to that, Jamie?
So, I mean, it's hard to be anything but thrilled with the development of Hart and Still. I believe both guys were 5th round picks, if I'm not mistaken. So to have 2 guys drafted in the 5th round play as much as they have, and not just play, but play well and contribute, I think is huge. To me, I think Still is the best slot corner on the team. Derwin's played there at times, but I think Still has been phenomenal. Hart's been great out there on the island, playing outside corner. Outside of a couple instances where they put him in some bad spots where I thought they maybe should have had him pressing instead of playing off, specifically the touchdown to T. Higgins, or was it Chase? I think it was Chase.
It was Chase.
Yeah, last week. Other than that, I think he's fared exceptionally well. So really hard to be anything other than thrilled at the way Hart and Still are playing. In terms of Clinkscale, I think Minter has had, and the way he's using Derwin has had a much bigger impact on Derwin's season than just Clinkscale. But I mean, you look at this corner room, and we've said it before. This corner room was a group that we thought, frankly, was among the worst in the league going into the season. And that was with Asante Samuel healthy. So to be down to, basically the bottom of the depth chart and be bringing guys up off the practice squad and out of free agency, and still have them playing well, I think just speaks volumes of the job that Clinkscale has done. I've got to believe he's simplifying things for these guys. They're doing a great job of putting them in a position to succeed and just letting them go out there and play and not asking them to remember rules and think too much like Staley did. So Clinkscale has been amazing, I think, for the whole secondary. Corner, safety, everybody.
Yeah. Agreed. Overall, it's just been a bang-up job by Clinkscale. For Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, you have to be really impressed with 2 fifth-round, what was initially, I would assume, considered to be developmental players who just got thrusted into like a big action under the big lights and been able to stand up since they've touched the field. I've especially been impressed with Tarheeb Still, though, because he's had to shift from his natural slot role to playing outside on an island due to those various injuries in the secondary. And he's not fallen off a ton. I mean, you've seen him be beat on the outside a few times here and there, but a lot of that's had to do with just the size of the corner. The wide receivers he's been going against, but technique-wise, he's been very, very good. Cam Hart didn't look anywhere near close to ready in the preseason and is now the clear, big-bodied, physical boundary corner this defense covets. So overall, I think Clinkscale, just with his helping to develop those guys, has done a tremendous job. Where Derwin is concerned, I agree. I think it's more about what he's being asked to do. He's playing a whole lot more slot, star, and dime backer as opposed to any deep third work, or more so in the box than deep third work. And that's where he should live. Now, I mean, I get it that maybe people haven't seen like the really big plays that they were accustomed to seeing from him maybe earlier in his career, but I think he's fitting in very well in the type of defense that they're asking them to play. So I really like Clinkscale and the job he's done specifically with those younger guys, but I agree with Jamie here that I think Derwin's performance right now has more so to do with the way that the defenses are being called and where they're asking him to align.
Yeah, and just to add on to that thought, I think somebody in the chat made a really good point, so I'm going to throw it up here. Squeezy says, the best thing about Derwin this year is that we're not really talking about him. Usually he's out there drawing helmet-to-helmet penalties, holds, etc. He's played a much smarter game this season, and I think that's a really good point. And I think that's a point you can make really about the entire defense. And I've made it a couple times on our shows, and that is that they're winning. They're playing really, for the most part, outside of last week, elite-level defense as a team, without really having like that one clear-cut Pro Bowl standout level player. They've got guys who are having really good seasons, but you're not looking at this list saying that's the guy that stirs the drink. That's the guy that's going to make that's going to be first team All Pro or make the Pro Bowl. Everybody's just doing their job. They're blending in. Nobody's sticking out for the wrong reasons. It just seems like everything is just so simple and everybody knows what they're being asked to do. And nobody is trying to go outside of those responsibilities to do more. And that's really what got this defense in trouble in recent years, is guys trying to do more. I think that's why Derwin was drawing some of those penalties. You know, he felt like he had to be the enforcer. He had to be the playmaker. And he was just trying to do too much. And they've taken a lot of that off his plate. And I think it's been really, really good for him and for the defense as a whole, just to let guys blend in and do their job.
Well, yeah, overall, it's been one of those defensive years, the defensive year where you can say that they're not dependent on one player or two per se, because you can see it just even last week. Khalil Mack doesn't play, and the defense is still playing pretty sound for the most part early on. It caught up with them a little bit later, but that was more to attrition, in my opinion, in the secondary, with guys having to maneuver around and some going out. But you see it in the fact that they can be missing a guy or so, or one of their quote unquote star players, and everything doesn't go in the tank. You could not have said that about Chargers defenses of the past. So overall, the fact that this is more of a team defense and everything is about the collective speaks volumes to just how good Jesse Minter has been.
Yeah, he's been phenomenal. Easily, I think Minter's easily made the biggest difference on this team, the biggest impact on the team. Yeah. Because the defense, it's not like they added a bunch of stars to this defense. It's basically the same group with some guys they got on reclamation projects, just adding them into the mix in the right roles, and everybody's performing. It's been really impressive.
For sure.
All right, next question. And I see some people bringing this up in the chat. So those of you who are bringing it up, it's timely, and it's almost like foreshadowing. So here we go. Crimea River says, if Jesse Minter were to land a head coaching job, who would you want to see replace him as defensive coordinator next season? What about Robert Saleh? While he's already been a head coach, some teams might be hesitant to hire him again so soon. he could potentially take on a DC role for a few years before making another run at a head coaching position. What do you think, Craig?
Saleh is a great name because he definitely does have the chops to call a defense. We've seen him be successful all the way from the Niners, and you see the difference in the Jets now that he's gone. I know they threw him under the bus and tried to make him a part of the problem, but the defense has almost gone in the tank since he's been away. So should tell you a lot there. So while it would be great to have him, I wouldn't be opposed to it. He would probably be my second option, though. Ideally for me, I think I would go after a guy that we just spoke about in Steve Clinkscale. He's also has like over 2 decades of experience. He was a co-defensive coordinator alongside Jesse Minter at Michigan last year. So he's totally locked into the scheme. I would imagine the transition would be somewhat seamless. So overall, yeah, Saleh would be option, I guess you could say 2. I mean, you could maybe scoot him up to 1B, but really and truly for me, Clinkscale just makes from, I guess, a connectivity standpoint, and also not having to change anything about the scheme, because if Saleh comes in, he may want to run the defense that he's accustomed to running, which is a bit different than what we've seen here in this year's scheme. So Clinkscale probably makes the most sense, but if you told me Saleh, fine. It's just, what that adjustment period would look like moving over to his defensive style.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there are 2 internal options that make a lot of sense for the Chargers as a DC role. Both guys are doing phenomenal jobs with position groups that were not very impressive on paper heading into the season. First one is everybody's talking about is Clinkscale. And with his experience and the work that he's done in the secondary, I think that would be a good choice. I could also see Navarro Bowman being an option with the work that he's done with the inside linebackers. I mean, that was not a great room on paper heading into the season. And you could make a very strong argument that the middle of that Chargers defense has been arguably the best position group on the field for the majority of the season, especially with the way they've been stopping the run. So either one of those guys would be good options. Saleh is more of a 4-3 guy. And I feel like the Chargers are a little bit closer to a 3-4 than a 4-3. So I'm not really sure Saleh is a great fit. I don't know if you want to go changing the scheme, but he's got the experience and he'd be fine. Any one of those 3 guys I think would be fine. But I just have a feeling they'd want to keep some continuity and hire from within and promote from within, specifically with a couple of guys who, frankly, I think have earned it.
Yeah, and I know that a lot of people will probably combat that by saying most teams don't run a lot of base defense and they come out in a lot of nickel, which is fine, I understand. But if the base of your defense is a 4-3 as opposed to 3-4, then that actually significantly changes your interior defensive line and the type of guys that you need to have available on your roster. So even though he may run a similar scheme when you're thinking of play calling, the fact that he has a base 4-3 as opposed to a 3-4 does change things up a bit roster-wise.
And the other thing, too, is, we got to kind of see how the season finishes for the defense. They're going to start playing some better offenses down the stretch. We've got the Ravens this week. They're going to see the Falcons, who have been playing some pretty good offense. We've still got one more game with the Chiefs. And we're starting to see some leaks in the run defense a little bit the last couple weeks. They've been a little bit more susceptible to big plays in the passing game over the last few weeks. So, some of the Jesse Minter talk could cool off a little bit depending on how the defense finishes. And he is a very young, I hate to use this term because it's going to come across as derogatory, but he's a young, quote unquote, defensive genius, defensive wizard, a guru. And we've heard that phrase thrown around before with Brandon Staley, and it blew up in our face. And it just seems like the league is more inclined, more often than not, to hire those young offensive minds and maybe give the young defensive minds a little bit more of an opportunity to prove themselves. So you could see a hesitation from some of the league to hire somebody after 1 year of experience calling plays defensively in the NFL.
Yeah, I hope they become a bit more gun shy, because I want to see this defense with more of the players that they want, whether it be via free agency or through the draft. So I just want to see them build and get an opportunity to have a Jesse Minter defense fully stocked with the type of players that he wants to deploy.
And it'd be fun to see what he can do when they start filling out that roster and upgrading at certain positions.
It's just speaks to how impressive it's been, like the type of players that he's plugged in and been able to do what he's done to this point. I mean, you've got a gang of cast-offs, guys who've underperformed, quote unquote, and some that haven't really had a chance in the past. And, it's turned into a top 5 unit overall. So again, I would love at least one more year with them. So let's hope the rest of the team's cool on the young defensive coordinator idea.
All right, let's move on to the next question for you, Craig.
Yeah, will not, won't Disley. Cool. So signature win, but also signature play by Derwin at the end. Can you speak to his play and impact this season based on what you've seen on film? Feels like that play quantified how great of a season and well the defense has been playing. What would you say to that?
I mean, we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but I feel like Derwin is just benefiting from not being asked to do everything. And he's been able to kind of slow down and focus on doing a few things really well instead of doing everything for the defense. And I think that's benefited him. And I think, he's also in a position now where everybody's doing their job. And he's able to just kind of blend in. And I think as good as he's been in the past, there's an advantage just being able to blend in and do your job. So Derwin's been great. I think we're not seeing as many of the blown coverages. We're definitely not seeing as many of the penalties and the dumb mistakes in key moments. He had a couple early in the season, but it's cooled off. It seems like he's adjusted his play style a little bit. And I feel like maybe he hasn't been quite as reckless because he doesn't feel like he has to, because he's not the only guy out there making plays.
Yeah, I think overall, aside from, some of the early stuff with him being suspended for the hit in the Steelers game, I think overall, together, his play on the field has been more so linked to the communication or level of communication throughout the secondary. You can tell that everyone understands what their job is. So like Jamie mentioned, he doesn't feel like he has to do more than what he's being asked to do. He's being, again, allowed to play in the box where he's most effective. So those significant snaps at slot or star or dime back are right up his alley. He can be effective in both the pass and the run game. And he's still shown the ability to be disruptive as a pass rusher. And I know that he has a few tackles for loss against the run as well, but he's mostly just fit in more than stood out, and that's perfectly fine. And I said this prior, some people may be disappointed by the lack of splash plays that he's had, but I'm really happy with his overall contribution. The fact that he isn't sticking out like a sore thumb for doing the wrong things is really more important to me than him having an interception or a sack every game. Collectively, overall, as a defense, they're doing what they have to do, and he's a cog in that defense. Now, albeit he's a very highly paid cog on the defense, he's still someone who keeps them together. He's their emotional leader, and I think that he's playing quite well this season. Maybe not getting the fanfare because he doesn't have the quote-unquote production, but still a very good year nonetheless.
Absolutely. It's just good to see him playing well. It seems like he's having fun, obviously enjoying winning and connecting with his head coach in a meaningful way. It's been fun to see him kind of rehab in a way after some rough times with the last couple coaches.
Yeah, it's been wild. Probably since his rookie year, you haven't seen that level of play quite to that degree, and that's what people are looking for. He was phenomenal his rookie year, but again, different scheme, being asked to do different things here, and the many changes that they've gone through here throughout the years to see him finally settle in this situation and be healthy at that, because we know injuries were also a problem as well. Again, speaks volumes overall to not only his level of commitment as a player, but the position that this organization has now put him in. Actually, this particular coaching regime.
All right, let's move on. I got one more question from the Discord. So Merritt says, can you expand on the impact that inserting Fisk into the lineup has had? Go ahead, Craig.
I mean, he's definitely been an upgrade as both a run and pass blocker over, let's say, Eric Tomlinson, who probably shall never be mentioned again on this show. We'll see what happens. But he's winning by just not being a net negative. But he's absolutely provided meaningful play. I mean, whether it's against or assisting on double teams, chips, sealing off edge rushers, play side on sweeps, etc. I feel like he's doing exactly what the Chargers are asking of him. And honestly, both he and Scott Matlock have been very good recently, honestly. But ever since he stepped on the field, he's shown himself to be very productive in the running game, especially in the running game. And the fact that he's not costing the team and getting blown up on the edges or being a complete and total liability is a win all in itself. So I think overall, this was a really good pickup. I knew they knew what they had in him. They saw it, but maybe he just needed an opportunity to develop a little bit more into the scheme, maybe learn a little bit more once he was brought over. But they clearly had an idea for him and how he could be utilized, and he's not disappointing.
Yeah, I agree with everything Craig said, but Craig, you missed something, and I figured for sure you'd see it on tape. And I saw it this week when I was doing film study for the walkthrough. It's that having him on the field in their 13 personnel makes that 13 personnel so dangerous when they decide to go play action and pass the ball. Because you get Matlock out there, you get Fisk out there. There were a couple sets where they had Disley, Fisk, and Smart out there on the field, and everybody just assumes they're going to run. That's what they ran that 29-yard touchdown pass to Disley up the seam from. And literally everybody was open. If you go back and watch that play, they had Palmer. I think it was Palmer, Fisk, Smart, Disley, all running routes. And Smart was open on the wheel route. Both Fisk and Disley ran seam routes, and Palmer was wide open on an out and up. The Bengals had no idea what hit them, and they went back to it later in the game and got another big seam route play out of it from Disley. So having two guys that you look at and you're like, oh, those are blocking tight ends on the field, it just makes that play action out of 13 personnel so dangerous. And I think it's going to lead to even more big plays coming out of that set in the air when teams overcommit to stopping the run because you've got Disley and Fisk on the field at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned that, and I remember thinking of that and reviewing it when I was watching film on it all over again. The fact that it was a huge tendency breaker, and I want to give a big shout out to Greg Roman for that, because nothing about that play told you that it was going to be a pass whatsoever. Almost every receiver was open on that. And so, I mean, just overall, once they get another tight end that's a dual threat guy, that's going to be even more dangerous because you'll have just that many more options on a play like that. But the fact that they can do that where they were at that point on the field, again, tremendous play call, just speaks to the level of growth we're seeing from Greg Roman. And I don't want to make this a Greg Roman conversation because it's about Tucker Fisk, but he absolutely does bring that to the table. Not much of a receiver, but I'd still say he's better than Tomlinson was. But yeah, when you are able to trot multiple pass blocking tight ends onto the field, defenses don't think at all about the passing game, especially when you're a quote unquote run first team. So bravo for them for breaking tendencies, and also for Fisk for being able to offer a little bit something more on the offensive side of the ball and helping this offense grow, honestly.
Yeah, and kudos to Greg Roman. We're going to talk about him here in a minute, but I think he deserves some credit for, like you said, breaking some tendencies. We're seeing a lot more play action on first and second down now. Those play action plays are leading to explosive plays in the passing game. And they're just really taking advantage of what everybody expects them to do, which is not something that we really anticipated coming from Greg Roman. Is, well, everybody thinks we're going to run, so let's just throw over the top. So it's good to see that kind of evolution in the passing game as Herbert continues to get healthy and get comfortable and confident, and they start stretching the play. And that play that I mentioned earlier, I did a film study on it in the walkthrough. That was probably the best designed and best spaced passing play they've had all season. They had two receivers on each side of the field. There was a good 10 to 15 yards of separation between both guys on each side of the field. And it was, when I say wide open, I mean, Palmer had no more than 15 yards of him. Disley was probably the most covered guy on the field, and that's where the ball went. Fisk was wide open up the seam, and there was nobody. Everybody had their back turned to Smart on the wheel route. I mean, it was perfect. You're talking about options. It was options galore. It was amazing. So hopefully we see more.
It's funny that you're talking about spacing out of 13 personnel of all sets. But yeah, it was actually very tremendous. So they didn't come out, spread the defense out at all. They came in a condensed set and still had proper spacing amongst their receivers and tight ends. So much growth there.
Yeah, very encouraging. Hopefully we see a lot more of that. All right, next question. Any chance Chark gets some passes thrown his way soon?
I'm not sure what's going on with DJ, man. I do know that Harbaugh had a reasoning here in the last few weeks for not having him be super inclusive. He thinks there's some synergy there with the wide receiving room. I do think there'll be opportunities here as the weeks go on, but keep in mind, I've been saying this for several weeks. I think this team is a second half of the season team, and they're going to start, and Jamie, you just used this term, to evolve even more on the offensive side of the ball. So I could see DJ Chark being kind of fused into the offense here in the coming weeks. I just don't think they're going to force him in it just for the sake of having a quote unquote vertical threat in the offensive side of the ball. So if you're asking me about this week, depends on, I would say, the availability of some of the receivers. I know Ladd's technically going to play, but he's a little banged up, and how they want to deploy the passing game. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him a little bit this week, but I don't think he's going to be like a featured guy probably ever, but he will carve out a role here as the weeks go on, they get deeper into the season.
I think you could see them using him a little bit like they used, now I'm blanking, Jalen Rieger earlier in the season, where they're just designing a handful of plays for him, maybe 2, 3, 4 plays for him every week, and just trying to get him mixed in at the most. But yeah, James Heritage mentions it in the chat. He wasn't even active last week. So we kind of need to we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. He's got to be in good enough shape to be on the field and contribute. And right now, I just feel like with the way Ladd is playing and the way QJ is developing, and Palmer's making some of those contested catches in tough situations, they don't really need Chark. So if he's able to infuse himself into the offense and carve out a role where he's getting 3 or 4 plays designed for him a week, then I think that's a win. But I don't think they really need him right now. Although if he's going to play and he's going to contribute, this would be a good week to do it because the Ravens passing defense sucks.
It
is
Ain't
bad.
It the truth?
So if ever there was a time to take a guy who's been hurt all season long and mix him in sparingly and get him comfortable and up to speed, this would be the week to do it because their secondary is brutal.
Yeah. At some point, they clearly had a plan for Chark when the season began. I mean, he was arguably wide receiver 1 coming out of camp. And then the injury happens and he's just kind of falling down the depth chart because the other guys have shown tremendous improvement, like QJ, who spoke to that. And Ladd has been everything they expected plus more. So it's almost like no real space for him. They've run into a problem where they almost have you know what? I don't even want to jinx that because then the whole injuries conversation starts up. So I won't go there. But I will say that right now, he's just kind of like a man on an island, or he doesn't really have an opportunity to step in and be super effective in the current game plans. They would literally have to be putting him on the field specifically for plays to him, which is fine. You can design those. But first and foremost, he has to get on the field. He has to play a significant number of snaps and earn those passes from Herbert. But again, as the season wears on, I can see him getting an opportunity.
Yeah, he'll get an opportunity eventually. They're going to need more out of their receivers at some point, especially the 3rd, 4th receiver. So it'll happen eventually. We'll see what happens this week. All right, next. And we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but
I got you. I'm assuming Mentor gets an A, but how would you grade Roman so far? Good question. What do you say, Jamie?
I'm going to go. I'm kind of stuck between a B- and a B. And I think the grade is slowly climbing. There are some things that he's doing that I really like. I think he is evolving as a play caller in a lot of ways. We mentioned, more 1st and 2nd down play action. The spacing seems to be improving. The ability to create explosive plays out of 13 personnel. The way that they are highlighting McConkey, Ladd in key spots. I think there's a lot to be happy with the offense as a whole. But when you start kind of zeroing in on certain things, the second half struggles are an issue. The running game has not been what I think a lot of us thought it would be. It started out really well when they were playing bad defenses. It's been pretty inefficient for the most part over the last several weeks. and they've had to be more aggressive in the passing game because of it. But then again, they've kind of been able to run the ball when they needed to at times, and they've had some big runs late in games to help set up wins or just run the clock out. So it's been kind of hot or cold, but you'd like to see that running game get more dialed in as we head towards what's looking more and more like a playoff run. And then they've got to put points on the board in the second half. Like, you can't be, scoreless for a quarter and a half in the second half. They've got to be able to put points on the board, move the ball, extend drives, and build on leads. So those are some of the complaints. But I'd say I'm going to go with a solid B because I think things are headed in the right direction, and I saw a lot of things that I liked last week. I think we'll see a lot more things that we like tomorrow night. But obviously, there is still plenty of room for improvement.
So we have the same grade. I'm going to say B. But for me, it's been more like, think of when you were in high school and you had like the grading periods. So like first 9 weeks, second 9 weeks, like however that was split up. So to start the season off, for me, he was at a solid like C minus. But over the weeks in the middle of the season, post like week 5, you see him start to improve upon that game plan where, yeah, we know that you want to be a run first team, but you can get there by coming out and not just running on first and second down. You saw that evolve. You're using the pass to set up the run when you're finding that the run isn't being super effective, which is great because you have the quarterback to actually be able to do that. And it's paid off much later in games. And you can still wear teams down. He still probably doesn't use the screen game as much as I think he should, even though you've seen it implemented here and there. Not as much to your backs as maybe you should be, but ironically enough, Will Dissly has been super effective in it. I would say that just the overall improvement to this point speaks to his ability to adapt. There are some other people in that room that are probably having some effect on that game call or that script and helping them to think a little bit differently in certain downs and distances, specifically when they find themselves in like second and long or third and long, where teams are kind of digging their heels in at the sticks and thinking that the Chargers are only going to be looking for a first down. They've had multiple big plays now in those scenarios where Roman's dialed up big plays that have gone for chunks like 25, 30 yards. And it's been really tremendous to see his development here. So at this point for me, I'm going to say it's a B. Hopefully it just continues to climb and he doesn't find himself going back to his old ways as the season goes on. But I don't think so. I think this is a coach that's learned throughout the years. He's got a lot of people in that room or those rooms with him that are having a significant effect on him and his ability to become a better play caller. But yeah, solid B for right now. It didn't start great, but it's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and I think too, we talked about this when they hired him and early in the season was, we kind of felt like he'd never had a quarterback like Herbert before. He had Lamar, who was limited when he had him. And some of those limitations may have been put upon Roman or put upon Lamar because of the way Roman was calling plays. But Lamar, when he first came in, was not a great passer. Really had a hard time completing passes outside of the hash marks, let alone outside the numbers and along the boundaries. So they had to really box in the offense for him just to give him a chance to succeed. And they took the ball out of his hands a lot. When he was in San Francisco, kind of the same thing. They dialed that it was a different offense for Kaepernick, but he was limited in some ways as a passer. They don't have those limitations with Herbert. And I think early in the season, they were protecting him and trying not to get too creative against teams they thought that they could beat without getting too creative. And now as they're playing better football teams, you're starting to see more creativity, more trust in Herbert. They're letting him go out and make those plays, but they're not asking him to throw the ball, 45 times and make 20 big throws in a game. Now it's more like, okay, we just need you to make 4 or 5 throws a game. Like, you're going to throw the ball more than that, but those are the plays we need you to make. When we have to have him, that's what we need. And that's what he's doing now. So it seems like Roman is evolving and he's recognizing what he has in a quarterback and taking advantage of it and just letting Justin do his thing.
And speaking to those limitations, some of that were attributed to that high ankle sprain Herbert had earlier in the season as well. So I'm sure they were kind of handcuffed out of necessity, but I don't think they would have opened it up a lot earlier anyway. You want to let those game plans develop throughout the year and not show too much of your hand, especially as you get into the tougher part of your schedule, and you're going to need to dig a little bit deeper into that playbook. But overall, just tremendous job by him in growing and not being as stubborn as we've seen him be in the past. He's had his moments. It's not been perfect, but the fact that he is improving speaks volumes.
And I love, by the way, hearing him in the media making comments like, oh, there's still a lot more that the opposition hasn't seen. I've still got a lot more in that bag that I can pull from. That sounds fun to me because it just seems like he's enjoying drawing up plays for Herbert. So can't wait to see what else he has in store as we get later into the season. So I'm going to throw up a question from the chat real quick. Matt Gross says, I'm a huge Herbert fan. I think he's at least top 5. But how much of the blame does he take for second half stalls? Feels like electric first half, dud second has happened his whole career.
So he doesn't go without blame. Herbert does have a tendency that I've noticed here to when the games get a little tight, he gets a little tight along with the game. You'll see him start to aim throws a little bit here and there. He's not playing as loose as he was. So I'm not necessarily calling him a front runner. It just feels like maybe a little bit when the game tenses up, he feels like he has to do more. And that's a mentality that he doesn't need to feel at this point. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily compare him to the Herbert of the past because that's who he had to be before. It was all on him. So the margin for error was much lower. Now I feel like that was one performance that we saw where you could kind of call him out on a couple throws for sure. Like he definitely missed Ladd McConkey on a very wide open throw. He did absolutely miss QJ on a crosser that could have gone for big yards as well. So those are 2 throws that he absolutely had to have. But even on some of these tremendous passes that he's making, he's kind of still missing some other guys that are open, maybe for easier receptions. I just would say that to this point, yeah, I still believe him to be a top 5 QB as well. But just give him the opportunity to continue to grow in this particular scheme. Like, keep in mind, the guys had 3-4 offensive coordinators to this point. So I know we're mid-season, but he's still adapting, and I really pay attention to the way that the game ended. Like, he made 2 clutch throws. Those are the ones that matter to me. He didn't completely fall in the tank. When those throws had to be made, he stepped up and made them. Was he perfect? Absolutely not. But we can't overlook how the game ended and the position that he put the team in to win. He definitely did that, and he's done it multiple times before.
Yeah, I think if you're talking specifically about the Cincinnati game, the Bengals made some adjustments in the second half. They were playing a lot of zone in the first half. They went to playing more man in the second half. And the Chargers are still trying to figure out ways to get guys open against man coverage on a consistent basis. So the windows were much smaller in the second half. And I know there was a streak there where he went 2 of 12 in the second half, which can't happen. It was super frustrating. But there were a bunch of drops mixed in there as well. So I think the offense as a whole is having some execution issues. They're not able to run the ball the way they want to in the second half, at least not consistently. And I think that is putting them in a position where they're becoming a little bit more predictable in the second half, and that's making them easier to defend. So I think really at this point, the passing game looks great, and I think it's going to continue to improve. You can see them making adjustments. I mean, that route Ladd ran the final drive where he runs that out and up on Hilton and just runs right by him. And they took advantage of the previous drive where Hilton almost picked off that pass.
Yeah.
The deep out. I mean, that's some high level play calling and some high level execution. And I think we'll see more of that as they continue to build some chemistry and some trust in the wide receivers. But those guys have to do a better job of getting open, and Justin's got to hit them when they're open.
Yeah. That's going to be their bugaboo moving forward, and it probably is going to haunt them until they get into the offseason and find a guy who can create for himself against man-to-man coverage, because right now the only person that does it with any real success is Ladd McConkey. Ladd's also 6 foot, like 180 pounds. So it's not ideal because teams could decide to get more physical with him, but the guy's been playing amazingly. QJ still not great against man coverage and creating separation, even though he has improved overall. But in general, you just have to look at the fact, and Jamie called it out, there were major adjustments made. There were even replacements as far as personnel goes from Cincinnati for guys who weren't performing well in the first half. So they made the adjustments, and it was to the Chargers' detriment offensively. But overall, he's definitely not perfect, but you have to look at it in totality. There were several things that didn't go well in that second half, and give props to the Bengals for making the adjustments and almost pulling it out.
And, that's a professional football team on the other side that was playing for their season. So you got to give them some credit as well. And I think, if you're looking at this season in terms of bad second halves, they have had some bad second halves, but I think each of those second halves kind of has to be looked at individually. Because a lot of those second halves were in games where they knew the other team wasn't going to be able to move the football. So they didn't really have to move the football. So they were comfortable just going 3, 4, 5 and out. Picking up a couple yards here and there, punting the ball and playing field position, and just letting the defense win the game. I think last week, in terms of having a healthy Herbert and being in a position to move the ball and put points on the board, last week was really the first time this season, in my opinion, where they had a real clunker of a second half in a situation where they really needed a good one. And it really stood out. But I'm not sure all of those other second halves this season we're not really comparing apples to apples, if that makes sense. All right. So we got one more from Twitter. No, I think we're done with Twitter. We're done with Twitter. Okay. So now we have a couple bad tweets. And like I said earlier, the bad tweets are starting to run a little bit dry. Part of that is because I'm trying not to repeat the same people over and over and over again.
Oh, you mean the same people keep saying the same stupid things?
Yeah, exactly.
Surprise, surprise. Dumb people are dumb.
All right, so we're going to go with the first bad tweet, and this might be one of my favorite ones, so we'll see how Craig responds to it. And let's see here if I can make that a little bit bigger. Can everybody read that? If I listened to everybody here, Harbaugh was this is from a Bears writer, by the way. If I listened to everybody here, Harbaugh was the guy to hire, but his Chargers team has an excellent veteran quarterback, plays in a shitty division except for Kansas City, and he has the same record as the Bears, 4-3, who are, of course, playing with a rookie. What am I missing? Where would you like to start, Craig?
So first and foremost, okay, so he is pushing back on the Harbaugh hire at the point that the Chargers were 4-3. Also, you can clearly tell this is not someone who actually watched the beginning of the season for the Chargers, because multiple things came into play. You had an injured QB, the one that he's alluding to. You had multiple injuries on the offensive line that they had to figure out how to maneuver around. So to be completely honest, a lot of the games the Chargers were in, they kind of had to find a way to win, but also survive, if I'm being honest here. And when you want to speak to, let's say, what the expectations are, what were you thinking of coming right out of the gate? Did you think that Jim Harbaugh was going to go undefeated in a team that's in what I consider to be, it's a rebuild, but I say it's a functional rebuild, not like in the traditional fashion where you have to tear everything down to the studs and start all over? Just in general, I don't understand the comparisons here, because this isn't an apples to apples situation. The Bears are a wreck from top to bottom. Organizationally, things are kind of out of whack. Yes, a rookie quarterback, high level player, at least they expect it to be. But I don't understand. What's the point here? Is he saying that Jim Harbaugh isn't that guy? And what is he basing that off of? I'm a little confused by that.
Yeah. So first things first is, are you really saying that you think Matt Eberflus is a better head coach than Jim Harbaugh?
That's what I was wondering, but he couldn't be saying that.
What are we getting at here? There was some discussion during the hiring period that the Bears might have the inside track on Harbaugh because he played for the Bears. People thought he wanted to stay in the Midwest, and I guess he has a good relationship with the Bears ownership, or the Bears ownership was obsessed with him on some level. I don't know. I don't know why he would take that job over taking a job with Justin Herbert, but nonetheless, there was some talk about that. But how's this tweet looking now? I mean, now the Chargers are 7-3. Where are the Bears? 4-6? 4-7?
Somewhere around there, definitely under 500.
And you mean tell me you don't think Jim Harbaugh, who played in NFL quarterback, would be a better head coach and developmental tool for Caleb Williams? You don't think that offense would have succeeded in Chicago? You don't think that defense would have succeeded? I mean, I just don't understand what point we're trying to make here, other than hi, I'm a fucking moron.
Yeah. I was just curious about what the intention was with this. I don't know.
So, like I said, I'm not sure what point he's trying to make, other than he's looking at a very small sample size. But if he thinks Matt Eberflus is a better head coach than Jim Harbaugh, then maybe he should find another sport to cover.
Yeah, I was just certain he couldn't have been saying that. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but it feels like this is more of a ding on Harbaugh and how he may just not be that guy. I hope he's not saying Matt Eberflus is a better, or at the time had been saying Matt Eberflus was a better coach.
Yeah, I'm not sure what people are thinking these days. So I hesitated to use this bad tweet, mostly because it brings up a topic that I kind of like to try to avoid, and it's Herbert versus Tua. But I thought this is something we could have some fun with because it's just so fucking stupid. And that is, think what you want and defend him. I really don't care. Oh, wait, that's not the one I meant to put up. Damn it. Hang on one second. Let me pull up the other one.
All good. We can have the is there still Herbert and Tua discourse going on now? Like, that's still a thing?
There is some.
Okay, interesting. People want to die on that hill. All good. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take this one down and put up the other one. Okay. The Tua Tagovailoa versus Justin Herbert debate is raging again. To me, the Dolphins with Herbert would be worse, and the Chargers with Tua would be worse. They are both where they need to be. But in a vacuum, there are more paths to success with Herbert. That's the difference. So let me make sure I understand. The Dolphins would be worse off with a quarterback with whom there are more paths to success. Is that what I'm to understand? And we believe enough to type and tweet this bullshit that with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Devin Achane and Jonnu Smith and all those weapons and a running game, that the Dolphins will be worse with Justin Herbert pulling the trigger. I don't understand.
Where I'm confused is the fact that they typed this out, and I'm assuming they didn't proofread it, because they clearly would have understood that they contradicted themselves. And I mean, there are only enough characters Twitter will allow for you to utilize. So I would just assume they did this in haste, but whatever. Yeah. So one of the knocks on Tua is the fact that he doesn't have that strong of an arm. And if you put him in any sort of inclement weather, like essentially take him out of Florida and put him like Midwest or, wherever you want to go later into the season, he almost falls into the tank. Does that make you feel more confident to have him over a guy like Herbert, who has a hose for an arm, is built to play in bigger games as far as just from a stature? If you want to look at that as something that matters as well, I do. I feel like just Herbert being a bigger, stronger individual athlete or overall athlete in general matters. I don't understand how you can compare the two in their situations and feel like you would be less successful with a guy like Justin Herbert, who is not limited to just getting balls to all world speedsters and allowing them to do their thing, or just chunking it up and saying, hey, Tyreek's down there somewhere, like he'll get the ball. No, Herbert is able to dial up whatever he needs to in any specific type of offense. He can throw the ball down the field. He can throw the ball if the temperature drops under 60 degrees. I don't think it's going to bother him that much. You don't have to worry about him taking shots and potentially having that's going to be disrespectful. You don't have to worry about he's built to take on a little bit more damage than a guy like Tua is. Just in any way that you could compare the two quarterbacks, Justin Herbert would be the superior. I understand what they're getting at. They're looking at the level of quote unquote success that the Dolphins have had when it comes to like wins and losses. But overall, yeah, I think if the Chargers had Tua, and this is no disrespect to that guy whatsoever, they'd be screwed right now, because I don't understand how you could have a average to below average athlete at quarterback with this wide receiving core and expect to be able to move the ball consistently. You would absolutely have to have a dominant running game. He wouldn't be able to be utilized the same way Justin Herbert is. You can't even ask him to run the ball. So when you just kind of line up, the guys side by side and you want to check off boxes, I'm sure you can put a whole lot more checks in Herbert's boxes than you could Tua. But again, this must be a Dolphins fan. Maybe. So whatever makes you feel good about that quarterback that I'm sure you worry about every day. Every single game you have to worry about whether he's going to make it through a full game. But, salute to your team and thanks for cheering them on. I guess you got to do what you got to do. That sounds like someone who's just trying too hard, though.
Are his brains going to get scrambled the next time he drops back to pass?
It's a question you have to ask yourself every week.
Yep. Every snap.
This is true.
All right. I'm going to throw up that last one because I have to laugh at it. So it says, this is during the Bengals game. If you look at the timestamp, this is either during or immediately following the Bengals game last week. This is somebody who was responding to me on Twitter. Think what you want and defend him. I really don't care if I'm on an island. I think he's unclutch, talking about Herbert, and gets nervous and makes errant throws.
What point did he turn off the game?
So he typed this either as Herbert was leading the game-winning drive or right after he led the game-winning drive. And he still thought it was a good idea to send it and tell us that he can't make clutch throws.
What's clutch? I maybe we have different definitions. I'm confused here because to me, Herbert did exactly what needed to be done for the Chargers to win that game. Did he not see the last two passes to Ladd McConkey, the last two completions? I'm sorry. There was even a completion in there. Who was the third receiver? Was that Palmer? Did Palmer make a catch on that drive too? I feel like there were three. They
ran 4 plays on the drive. I think the last 2 plays were running plays.
Okay. So, yeah, got it. So the 2 passes to Ladd McConkey, were they not considered to be clutch? Did they not put the team in position to win? Do they not count as clutch because they weren't like walk-off touchdown passes? How do we define clutch? So, yeah, it feels like someone who locked in to just like that part of the game, the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter. They saw him miss 2 throws, and then suddenly he became not clutch, and then just proceeded to ignore the remainder of the game. That's fine, man. If you have an agenda, push it. But the thing is, like, we all have eyes. We can see how the game turned out. You could shape this however you choose. And yes, you are on an island, idiot island, and you will remain there by yourself.
So I feel sorry for this person because we were literally watching Justin. The best example of clutch, in my opinion, is the second throw he made to McConkey, where he's standing in the pocket with, I think it was BJ Hill bearing down on him. He gets decked as he releases the ball.
Should have been a penalty.
Like a 25-yard strike right on the sideline to Ladd to move the chains and keep the drive going. If that's not clutch, then there's no such thing as clutch. That's the definition of a clutch throw. So, and he makes throw after throw after throw. So I know he had a rough streak at the end of that game, but you know what? Joe Burrow finished that game 1 for 8. Does that mean he's not clutch?
No, Joe gets passes. We know how this works. Like, there's sympathy only for certain quarterbacks, but Justin Herbert never gets those same passes. So, whatever. I guess it's because Joe's played in a Super Bowl, so it forgives him of all future sins.
All right, everybody. We've got about 5 minutes left. So if we want to fire up a couple questions in the chat, we'll take maybe 2 or 3 questions, and then we'll call it a day. So get your questions in real quick, and we'll answer them, and then we'll let you guys get back to your Sunday.
And I think we got one.
So James Heritage says, with Perriman's absence Monday night, who do you see playing most next? Excuse me, most next to Dion? Quarterman, Neiman, or even Caleb Murphy?
We're leaving someone out there, aren't we?
He's leaving out Troy Dye, and in my opinion, you're going to see a mix of Dye and Neiman.
I would think so. Also, Quarterman more fits the, I would say, the build, even though he's a bigger linebacker of a Denzel. When you're talking about like a thumper in the run game, he provides more of that for you. I'm just not sure how comfortable they're going to be with him in there on early downs regularly. I would say, yeah, probably that combination. You have to throw Troy Dye in there and Nick Neiman. I'm not sure how much Caleb Murphy work we'll see, but definitely Dye and Neiman will be there alongside of Dayon. But this was definitely the game to have a guy like Denzel, because you need someone who can get their nose dirty and come up and attack those gaps. And that's probably something else they're going to have to do in order to stop that running game, since they don't have someone who can just kind of like, dig in their heels and, attack a running back who's hitting through the A or B gaps. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the second level.
Yeah, I think it's going to be mostly Neiman and Dye. Those are the guys they're going to lean on. Maybe a few snaps of Murphy here and there, but Quarterman's mostly going to be on special teams, I think. All right, next question, and this has been in the chat a couple times so far today. Squeezy says, do you guys see Roman being this team's version of the Chiefs Spags, meaning he's not interested in being a head coach?
Yeah, probably. Number one, I don't think he's interested in being a head coach. I don't get that vibe from him. I mean, things could change, but he has proven himself to probably be more of the career coordinator type. And so I'm not sure. He doesn't, no disrespect to him, Greg Roman just doesn't strike me as a head coach. Something about him doesn't give that off for me. But again, like I said before, if it's something he wants to move into in the coming years, then great. But he's going to have to prove himself significantly here for the next few years on the offensive side of the ball as a play caller before he's probably given that opportunity. But yeah, if he decides that this is the route that he wants to stick in, the lane he wants to be in, as long as he keeps showing growth like he is right now, yeah, I could see him doing that.
I think the bigger question is the league going to be interested in Roman as a head coach? And I think if you look at the pattern of who gets hired to be NFL head coaches, while there is an overwhelming tendency or interest in offensive-minded head coaches, usually it's young offensive-minded head coaches. You don't usually see a lot of guys who have been around in the league as position coaches and defense as coordinators on the offensive side of the ball for a really, really long time, then get an opportunity to be a head coach. It's pretty rare. So I know Dave Canellis just had an opportunity this season with the Panthers, but usually it's the young offensive coaches that get those opportunities. So for me, I think Roman is probably where he wants to be, coaching with Harbaugh. And I doubt that he gets that opportunity just because they're going to be looking for the young guru creative touch on offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned that when you're talking about just the younger offensive minds, they're way more quote unquote innovative than he is. Like the old school Roman mentality of football probably isn't all the rage in the NFL right now, for lack of a better way of looking at it. But overall, yeah, I don't think he fits what the NFL wants right now. And you're going to be looking at owners who want someone who can, ignite a franchise specifically. He doesn't really do that. So he's probably better off just being an offensive coordinator. I think that's his bag. Well, it's where he's always been, but just allow him to continue to develop there. And he's going to have the right pieces around him to succeed. Also, if he's going to be a head coach and run that also same style of offense that he's running right now, which may not go over well across the league. It works for the Chargers, but not everybody likes that brand of football.
All right, next question. I got it. Next question is from Mikey Sports. He says, do you think we get to see an expanded rollout of Kamani Vidal this season without an injury?
Gus Edwards is back. He's performing well in the limited snaps that he's been given. I don't foresee a real role for Kamani Vidal unless it ended up being, like you mentioned, an injury, and then it probably still leans more towards the special team side of things. I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of Kamani Vidal run this season at all. I mean, I think a lot of people are looking at the touchdown he had earlier in the season on that pass reception on the wheel route and think that he could be a little bit more dynamic. But I just don't see a path for him getting meaningful snaps for the remainder of the season unless somebody goes out. Guy's still growing as a rookie, and I'm sure he has a lot more to show and more to learn. But right now, as the season continues to develop, this team wants to run the ball and be downhill and be dominant, and they want more of the, lightning and thunder combination. So I don't foresee Kamani getting on the field or even really being active unless we're talking about injuries.
Yeah, there's just not a need right now. I think that's the big thing is they've got Gus back. They've got the goal line situation settled in their minds with Haskins.
Yuck.
Tell me about it. And you've got Dobbins carrying the load. So I don't think there's an overwhelming need to give Vidal an expanded role. And they don't really pass the ball to the running backs that much. So there's not really a whole lot of value in having him on the field right now. So it's just not how they're built or how they want to run the offense. So my guess is they're going to just let him season on the inactive list for most of the rest of the season, unless or until somebody gets hurt. And then I said this in the Discord yesterday, but there is a running back who I think fits exactly what the Chargers want to do, who's going to be in the draft this year, and you could probably get him in the 3rd or 4th round. And that's ASU's Cam Scatabo. And I'm telling you right now, if you get a mix of him and Vidal, that could be a pretty deadly tandem at running back if they decide to reset things with Dobbins and Gus next year.
Yeah, Scatabo definitely fits that hardball mold.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday. We hope you enjoyed the show. I know we did. And we will see everybody for after hours after the game tomorrow night. So thanks. Have a great weekend, and we will see you tomorrow.
Salute. Like, share, and subscribe.
Oh, yeah. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe on Twitter, Facebook, all that good stuff. And if you're interested in joining the Patreon and the Discord, you can find a link for that on our Twitter page. So that's where you can find us. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest.
One more thing. Contest.
Oh, right? Yeah. We forgot. Okay, so we've been doing something the last couple of years during the holidays to kind of help out and thank everybody for supporting the show. And we're going to do it again next week for Thanksgiving. And that is we are going to do a holiday giveaway. And here's how it's going to work. We are going to set aside $600. And we're going to give away $200 each to 3 people who like and subscribe and follow on YouTube. So go ahead and check out our YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff, and we will pick out 3 lucky winners, and we will send you $200 to help with your holiday dinner. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, for sure. Hope it makes things a little bit easier. Super expensive this time of year for everyone. So hopefully you guys can find this and put it to good use.
Absolutely. So have a great Sunday, and we'll see everybody for after hours tomorrow. Thank you so much.